Piper Williams hovered in her air chair up by the ceiling of her prison, the Lightblade's training room. She'd been locked in here for weeks now, with only the robot Sumi for company. It was way too long. She was bored, she was furious, and, she had to admit it, she was desperate. If she was ever going to see her own team or her own ship again, she had to take action. She and Sumi were playing hide-and-seek. For Sumi, hide-and-seek was nothing more than a game. For Piper, it was deadly serious. She leaned out over the edge of her air chair and whispered, "I'm here." Down below, she saw Sumi's head tilt upward, and she heard the creak and bump of the little robot's springy legs. "Where? Where? Where?" called Sumi. When she was excited, her voice was like a stream of hiccups. Piper swooped down behind a cabinet full of weightlifting equipment. "Here," she whispered again. Sumi changed direction, moving in short jumps and grunting. Piper stayed still and watched. Sumi rounded the corner. "Ha ha! Ha ha!" she cried, hiccuping like mad. "Found you!" Piper smiled and shook her head as if she were disappointed. "You win this time, but not next time," she thought. Out loud, she said, "Another game. You found me too fast. I'll hide again." Sumi nodded her oversized head. Piper thought she looked a little like a football held up by a frame of K'NEX. "Just one more time," Sumi said. "Then Quantum Theory Lesson 71. She shut down her sight screen and began to count. 1, 2, 3, 4. Piper took off, heading for a high metal cabinet behind the stationary bikes. Her air chair hummed so softly that she was sure Sumi couldn't hear it while she was counting. With some careful maneuvering, she got behind the cabinet and hovered there. Good air chair, she thought, and gave it a silent pat with her finger. It was like a pair of legs to her. Her own didn't work at all, and even better, like a pair of wings. Piper had already explored every inch of the training room, looking for a way out. Every pipe, every vent, every drain, every seam or crack or dent in the wall. She'd probed each one. And at first, she'd been sure she'd find a way, because the light blade wasn't very well constructed. Piper was surprised at that. She had thought it would be just like her own ship, the Cloud Leopard, but it was more like a rough copy, as if it had been banged together in a hurry. Still, there was nothing she could pry apart or pound on to make an opening. The main door was the only possibility. It was equipped with a complex lock that only Sumi could release. At mealtimes, Sumi would enter the lock's code and open the door, and Nico would be there with a tray of food. Piper had thought of trying to fly out over Sumi's head, but the problem was Nico. There wasn't room for her hovercraft between his head and the top of the door. 100! shouted Sumi. "Here I come!" Bounce, bounce, bounce. Piper waited until Sumi was near enough and then said, "I see you," in a loud whisper. Sumi's head jerked upward, and she let out a stream of little hiccups. "Where? Where?" "Right here," whispered Piper. Then silently flew upward and banked left. "Here," she whispered again. Sumi spun around, and her springy legs contracted. She bounded toward Piper's voice. "Can't find you," she cried. When she was distressed, her stern machine voice became a squeak, like a rusted joint. Piper zoomed to the upper level of the training room, looping behind Sumi. "I'm here," she called, and at the same time she pulled out the spoon she'd pinched from her breakfast and dropped it. It clattered to the floor, clanging off the pull-up bars on the way down. "Gotcha now," squeaked Sumi.